What if the greatest British war films ever made were not locked behind paywalls or buried in dusty archives, but waiting for you right now, free to discover? These are not polished victory stories. They are tense, human, sometimes uncomfortable portraits of courage under pressure. Halfway through this list, one film quietly flips the entire idea of heroism on its head, and by the end, you may realize why these stories still refuse to fade. Number 15, The Way Ahead, 1944. Before British war cinema learned how to celebrate bravery, The Way Ahead chose something far riskier. It chose honesty. Made while the war was still unfolding, this film follows ordinary civilians pushed into uniform, men who do not arrive as heroes but stumble forward through confusion, fear, and slow transformation. Director Carol Reed and writer Eric Ambler refused to polish the experience. Training is awkward. Confidence is fragile. Leadership is earned, not declared. What shocked audiences at the time was how unromantic it felt. Soldiers complain. Orders are questioned. Courage arrives late and sometimes quietly. Officials worried it showed too much weakness, but that is exactly why veterans later embraced it. They recognized themselves in the silences between scenes, in the moments where nothing heroic happens and survival becomes the goal. David Niven's calm authority grounds the film, while Trevor Howard's early appearance hints at the commanding presence he would later master. The story builds patiently, never rushing the transformation. When action finally arrives, it feels earned rather than staged. Today, The Way Ahead remains freely available online, still resonant because it understands a simple truth. Strength is not born in speeches. It grows slowly, under pressure, among people who never ask to be tested but move forward anyway. Number 14, Ice Cold in Alex, 1958. Ice Cold in Alex pretends to be a simple journey film, but it is really about endurance under relentless strain. Set during the North African campaign, it follows a small medical convoy crossing endless desert heat with one shared dream waiting at the end: a cold drink in Alexandria. That dream becomes a symbol, not of comfort, but of hope. John Mills plays Captain Anson with quiet exhaustion, a man held together by routine and responsibility. The group's fragile balance shifts when a mysterious ally joins them, turning the journey into a test of trust. Doubt creeps in slowly. Every breakdown feels heavier under the sun. Every mile becomes harder than the last. What gives the film its lasting power is its physical reality. Scenes were filmed in real desert conditions. The heat was real. The fatigue was real. Performances crackle because the actors were genuinely pushed. Censors were uneasy with how vulnerable the characters appeared, but the director refused to soften it. The final scene is legendary, not because of celebration, but because it releases tension built over the entire journey. Ice Cold in Alex remains freely watchable today, and it still teaches the same lesson. Survival is rarely dramatic. It is stubborn, quiet, and often powered by the smallest promise on the horizon. Number 13. Went the Day Well, 1942. Went the Day Well opens like a postcard and ends like a warning. Released during the height of the war, it dares to imagine a peaceful English village quietly overtaken from within. No sweeping battles, no grand speeches, just everyday trust turning dangerous. The film's genius lies in its contrast. Polite conversations sit beside sudden fear. Familiar faces become uncertain. Ordinary people are forced to act without guidance, revealing how fragile comfort truly is. What unsettled audiences most was not the threat itself, but how easily it blended in. Director Alberto Cavalcanti crafted a story that feels almost too close to home. Officials worried it would create panic, but supporters argued it delivered a vital message: stay alert. Do not assume safety. The tension builds steadily, never rushing, letting unease do the work. What makes the film endure is its refusal to soften consequences. Courage here is not glamorous. It is reactive, messy, and deeply human. That honesty earned it lasting respect among critics and film historians. Now, freely available online, Went the Day Well remains one of the boldest British films of its era. It reminds us that danger rarely announces itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives smiling, asking politely, and waiting for the door to open. Number 12. The Cruel Sea, 1953. The Cruel Sea does not celebrate naval life. It examines the cost of it. Set aboard a small escort ship in the Atlantic, the film follows officers and crew as they endure endless patrols, isolation, and crushing responsibility. Jack Hawkins delivers one of his most restrained performances as a captain slowly worn down by duty. The sea itself becomes the true antagonist, gray, endless, unforgiving. The story focuses on repetition, long nights, and the emotional toll of leadership. Decisions are made with limited information and lasting weight. There are moments where duty demands choices that haunt long after the waves settle. Audiences in the early 1950s were stunned by its emotional restraint. There is no triumph here, only persistence. Filming in rough waters added authenticity. Ships used had real service history, and the atmosphere feels lived in rather than staged. Veterans later called it the most accurate portrayal of life at sea ever put on screen, not because of spectacle, but because it understands exhaustion. Still free to watch today, The Cruel Sea remains powerful because it respects silence. It shows that courage is not always loud. Sometimes it is simply returning to the deck, again and again, despite knowing what the night may bring. Number 11. The Hill, 1965. The Hill is one of the most confrontational British war films ever made, and it does not take place on a battlefield. It unfolds inside a military detention camp under a brutal sun, where discipline becomes punishment and authority goes unchecked. Sean Connery sheds all glamour here, delivering a raw performance driven by defiance and survival. The title refers to a mound of sand detainees are forced to climb repeatedly, a symbol of power used without mercy. The repetition is deliberate. It wears down both characters and viewers. Director Sidney Lumet refuses comfort, letting heat, sweat, and silence do the storytelling. Officials strongly objected to its message. Cooperation was denied. Equipment was withheld. That resistance only sharpened the film's edge. Shot in harsh conditions, performances feel strained because they were. Actors collapsed. Tension was real. What makes The Hill endure is its focus on control rather than conflict. It asks uncomfortable questions about obedience, dignity, and what happens when systems forget the people inside them. Freely available online today, The Hill still feels daring. It reminds us that courage sometimes means refusing to be broken, even when the rules say you should be. Number 10. Tunes of Glory, 1960. Tunes of Glory looks like a traditional regimental drama at first glance. Then, it slowly tightens the screws. Set in a Scottish Highland unit after the war, the film becomes a quiet battle of wills between two commanding officers who represent opposite ideas of leadership. Alec Guinness plays Major Jock Sinclair, loud, emotional, and adored by his men. John Mills arrives as his replacement, calm, controlled, and quietly superior. What unfolds is not about drills or duty. It is about pride. Guinness delivers one of the most layered performances of his career, showing how praise can become a trap. His character feeds on admiration, and when it is threatened, the cracks begin to show. Mills does not raise his voice. He does not need to. His restraint becomes its own form of pressure. Audiences at the time were unsettled. Officials disliked how openly the film exposed class tension and emotional instability within leadership. This was not the image many wanted on screen, but critics recognized its honesty. The conflict feels inevitable, not dramatic for effect. Today, Tunes of Glory remains freely available online, and it still stings. It understands that authority without self-control can collapse inward. The most dangerous battles are not always loud. Sometimes they unfold quietly, behind polished uniforms and forced smiles. Number 9. The Dam Busters, 1955. The Dam Busters became famous for its precision, but its real power lies in its focus on preparation rather than celebration. The film follows the planning and execution of a daring aerial mission, emphasizing teamwork, engineering, and nerves stretched thin. Richard Todd's portrayal of Wing Commander Guy Gibson anchors the story with calm resolve rather than bravado. What made the film groundbreaking was its attention to detail. Every procedure feels deliberate. Every delay matters. Real pilots were consulted. Aircraft were flown low over water again, recreating tension rather than exaggerating it. Audiences felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on every character. Behind the scenes, officials closely monitored the production, ensuring accuracy and restraint. Yet, even within those limits, the film communicates unease. Success does not arrive easily. Loss is never brushed aside. The music may soar, but the story remains grounded. Over time, critics debated whether the film leaned too cleanly toward heroism. Veterans often disagreed, pointing out how accurately it captured the strain of precision under pressure. Now freely available online, The Dam Busters still commands attention. It shows that achievement is rarely sudden. It is built slowly through discipline, patience, and people who carry more weight than they ever admit. Number 8. The Bridge on the River, Kwai, 1957. The Bridge on the River Kwai is not a story about victory. It is a study of obsession. Alec Guinness plays Colonel Nicholson, a man so devoted to order and discipline that he loses sight of why those values exist in the first place. What begins as dignity slowly transforms into dangerous pride. The setting is oppressive. Heat presses down. Time stretches. The bridge becomes a symbol not of survival, but of misplaced purpose. Guinness's performance is controlled, almost polite, which makes the unraveling more disturbing. He never sees himself as wrong. That is the tragedy. The film's production was famously difficult. Weather destroyed sets, tempers flared. The final scene could only be filmed once, adding real tension to the climax. When it premiered, some veterans objected, feeling their experiences had been softened. Others praised its deeper question. Today, the film is freely accessible online and still deeply debated. That debate is its strength. It asks whether duty should be followed without question, and it leaves you uneasy long after the final whistle fades, wondering where discipline ends and blindness begins. Number 7. A Bridge Too Far, 1977. A Bridge Too Far is a rare war epic that admits failure without apology. Telling the story of Operation Market Garden, the film follows an ambitious plan that collapses under overconfidence and miscommunication. Despite its massive cast, no single hero dominates. The focus stays on the cost of decisions made far from the ground. Director Richard Attenborough insisted on realism. Real locations were used. Thousands of extras filled the frame. Entire towns were transformed to match history. Yet the tone remains restrained. Chaos feels confusing, not thrilling. Progress slows. Mistakes compound. When the film was released, some critics found it overwhelming. Others praised its refusal to offer comfort. Veterans responded strongly, thanking the filmmakers for acknowledging what had gone wrong rather than reshaping it into triumph. Now freely watchable online, A Bridge Too Far stands as a sobering counterpoint to celebration-focused war cinema. It reminds us that courage alone is not enough. Planning matters. Humility matters. And sometimes, the most honest story is the one that ends without victory. Number 6. The Longest Day, 1962. The Longest Day does not tell one story. It tells hundreds. Created as a sweeping reconstruction of the Normandy landings, the film moves between perspectives, showing confusion, courage, and coincidence unfolding at the same time. Shot in black and white, it feels closer to memory than spectacle. What sets the film apart is its scale paired with restraint. Real locations were used. People who had lived through the events advised the production. Scenes linger on small moments rather than dramatic speeches. A missed signal, a wrong turn, a quiet pause before movement. Officials from multiple countries reviewed the script, often pushing back against moments that showed uncertainty. Many of those moments survived, giving the film its documentary feel. It does not rush. It lets history breathe. Freely available online today, The Longest Day remains humbling. It shows how large events are built from countless small choices. Watching it feels less like entertainment and more like stepping into a shared memory that still carries weight. Number 5. The Guns of Navarone, 1961. The Guns of Navarone arrives with the confidence of an adventure film, then slowly reveals something heavier underneath. Based on Alistair MacLean's novel, it follows a small Allied team sent on a mission so demanding that success feels unlikely from the start. Gregory Peck, David Niven, and Anthony Quinn form a group held together more by necessity than trust. What makes the film stand out is its exhaustion. Every step forward feels earned. The terrain fights back. Plans unravel. Tempers flare. The story understands that pressure does not create unity. It exposes cracks. Characters argue. Doubt creeps in. Leadership shifts when strength fails. The production itself mirrored the chaos on screen. Filming in Greece brought storms, delays, and real danger. Niven nearly did not finish the film due to illness, returning only after long recovery. That weariness shows. Performances feel strained because they were. Critics once accused the film of turning conflict into spectacle, but audiences sensed something else. A story about limits, about how far people can be pushed before resolve turns into survival instinct. Now, freely available online, the Guns of Navarone still grips because it balances scale with humanity. It understands that even the boldest plans depend on tired people refusing to stop moving. Number 4. The Desert Rats, 1953. The Desert Rats does not focus on sweeping victory. It focuses on endurance. Set during the North African campaign, the film follows British and Australian forces holding ground under relentless conditions. Richard Burton plays a schoolteacher turned officer, thrust into responsibility he never sought. Sand dominates the screen. Heat presses down on every scene. Progress feels minimal. What unfolds is not a story of glory, but of patience stretched thin. Orders are followed because there is no alternative. Morale wavers. Small moments carry weight. The film faced resistance upon release. Some felt it showed too much strain, too little celebration. Officials worried it softened authority, but veterans later praised it for capturing fatigue rather than triumph. Burton's performance feels internal, restrained, and quietly powerful. Behind the scenes, disagreements between actor and director sharpened the film's tension. Burton wanted realism. That insistence shaped the final tone. Nothing feels polished, nothing feels easy. Today, The Desert Rats remains freely available online, often overlooked but deeply respected. It reminds viewers that resilience is rarely dramatic. Sometimes it is simply standing your ground when everything around you suggests you should collapse. Number 3. The Colditz Story, 1955. The Colditz Story is not about daring escapes, it is about patience. Based on real events inside a high-security prison, the film follows Allied officers who turn captivity into quiet resistance. John Mills and Eric Portman lead a cast defined by restraint rather than bravado. The pacing is deliberate. Plans unfold slowly. Setbacks are constant. Success feels distant. That realism sets the film apart. It refuses shortcuts. Every decision feels weighed down by consequence. Director Guy Hamilton, himself a wartime officer, insisted on authenticity. Scenes were filmed in the actual location, surrounded by walls that still carried memory. Former prisoners visited the set, some visibly shaken. That weight settles into the film. Audiences expected excitement. What they received was tension built from silence. Critics later praised its refusal to exaggerate. Courage here is quiet. Shared glances, small acts of defiance. Now freely accessible online, The Colditz Story remains compelling because it respects intelligence. It understands that resistance does not always announce itself. Sometimes it waits, watches, and moves only when the moment is right. Number 2. In Which We Serve, 1942. In Which We Serve was created while the war was still unfolding, and that urgency shapes every frame. Co-directed by Noel Coward and David Lean, the film follows the crew of a British destroyer through memory and loss, weaving personal lives into service at sea. Coward plays the captain with calm dignity, never raising his voice, never seeking attention. Flashbacks connect the crew to families waiting at home, grounding the story in shared sacrifice rather than spectacle. The structure was innovative for its time, shifting between past and present without losing momentum. Officials monitored production closely, hoping for reassurance. Coward pushed for honesty instead. Scenes of fear remained. Doubt was not erased. That balance turned the film into something deeper than motivation. Audiences responded immediately. It felt personal, familiar, real. Some called it sentimental. Others called it necessary. Freely available online today, In Which We Serve still resonates because it understands unity, not as a slogan, but as a bond formed under pressure. It shows how service reshapes people quietly, long before history writes their names down. Number 1. The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, 1943. The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp is the film Britain almost rejected. Released during the war, it dared to question tradition itself. Directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, the film follows Clive Candy across decades of service, tracing how ideals harden, soften, and sometimes fail. Roger Livesey's performance is warm, stubborn, and deeply human. He is not mocked, he is examined. Deborah Kerr appears in 3 roles, each representing lost time and changing values. The colors are rich, the emotions are not simple. Officials strongly opposed the film. They feared it weakened morale. Attempts were made to delay its release. The filmmakers refused to compromise. Time proved them right. What makes the film timeless is its honesty. It does not dismiss tradition. It asks when tradition stops serving people and starts trapping them. Now, freely watchable online, fully restored, Colonel Blimp stands as Britain's most thoughtful war film. It does not shout. It reflects. And in doing so, it leaves the deepest mark of all. These films are not just old classics, they are conversations with the past, still asking sharp questions today. About leadership, about endurance, about the cost of holding on too tightly or letting go too late. You can watch them freely, but they will not leave you unchanged. Which one will you start with? Let me know. Below, share this with a fellow film lover, and remember, some stories refuse to fade, no matter how much time passes.